Chapter 80. Sri Shukdev said, O great king! I will now relate the history of Sudama, how he went to Krishna, and his poverty was put an end to. Do you listen with attention? In the direction of the southern quarter is the Dravis country, where Brahmins and traders dwelt as kings, under whose government adoration and remembrance, and meditation upon Huri were practiced in each house. And all men performed penance and sacrifice, and respected religion and offered gifts, and reverenced virtuous and holy men and cows, and Brahmins, thus they all dwelt there, thinking of none but Huri. In that country was a Brahmin, named Sudama, who had been instructed by the same spiritual preceptor as Sri Krishna Chand, very humble, emaciated and poor, so that there was no thatch upon his hut, and he had nothing to eat. One day Sudama's wife, being greatly frightened and grieved at their poverty, went to her husband in a state of alarm, and said trembling, O great king! We are greatly troubled by this state of poverty. If you wish to put an end to it, I will point out a plan of doing so. The Brahmin asked, What plan? She replied, Sri Krishna Chand, the root of joy, lord of the three worlds, and an inhabitant of Dwarka is your chief friend. If you go to him our poverty will depart, because he is the bestower of wealth, virtue, desires and final happiness. O great king! When the Brahmin's wife had thus explained to her husband, Sudama said, O beloved! Even Sri Krishna Chand does not give anyone anything, without that person giving him something first. I know well, that during my whole life, I have not given anything to anyone, and without having given, whence shall I receive? I will, however, go as you suggest and come back after seeing Sri Krishna ji. On hearing these words the Brahmin's wife tied up a little rice in an old white cloth and brought it and gave it to her husband as a present for Krishna, and placed before him a string, a brass pot and a staff. Then Sudama, having cast the string and the brass pot upon his shoulders and placed the bundle of rice under his arm, taking the staff in his hand, set out for the city of Dwarka. Having propitiated Ganeshu and meditating upon Sri Krishna Chand ji. O great king! Going along the road, Sudama began to say to himself, I am certainly not destined to be rich, but, by going to Dwarka, I shall see Sri Krishna Chand, the root of joy. With these thoughts in his mind Sudama arrived at the city of Dwarka after a journey of less than 9 hours, and there beheld a city, surrounded on all sides by the sea. All round the city were forests and groves, producing flowers and fruits. At the ponds, pools and large wells of masonry, wheels and leather buckets were in full play, herds of cows were grazing in different places, and the cowherds' children, who accompanied them, were engaged apart in sports. Having recited thus much, Sri Shukdev said, O great king! Sudama, having beheld the beauty of the forests and groves, went into the city, and saw very elegant houses of gold, covered with jewels, shining in full splendor. At the different places of meeting, the descendants of Jadu were seated, forming courts like that of Indru. In the markets, roads and crossroads, things of different kinds were sold. In each house, and in various places, songs were sung, and gifts and adoration offered in honor of Huri, and Krishna's praises were celebrated, and the inhabitants of the whole city were highly delighted. O great king! Beholding all these sights, and making inquiries for the abode of Sri Krishna Chand, Sudama went and stood at the great entrance gate of Krishna's house, and timidly inquired from someone where Sri Krishna Chand lived. The man replied, O divinity! Go inside the house, Sri Krishna Chand ji is seated opposite on a jeweled throne. When, O great king! Sudama, having heard this, went inside. Sri Krishna Chand, on seeing him, descended from his throne. And, advancing to meet him, seized his hand with the greatest affection, and led him in. Having then placed him upon his throne, he washed his feet, and took the water, with which his feet had been washed. After this, smearing his body with sandal, putting unbroken rice upon his forehead, and decorating him with flowers, placing perfumes and lamps before him, Krishna performed adoration to Sudama. Having done so the lord of the Judus joined his hands, and made kind inquiries regarding his health, and having proceeded thus far in the narrative, Sri Shukdev said to the Raja, O great king! On beholding this behavior on the part of Krishna, Sri Rukmini Ji and the 7 queens, and the 16,800 wives and all the descendants of Jadu, who were then present, began to say to themselves, "What virtuous act has this poor, weak, dirty, shabbily dressed Brahmin done in a former birth, that the Lord of the 3 worlds has treated him with such great respect? O great king! Sri Krishna Chand, acquainted with the secrets of the heart, knowing the thoughts of them all at that time, began in order to remove the perplexities of their minds, to talk to Sudama upon subjects connected with their spiritual preceptor's house. Brother, do you recollect one day, when the preceptor's wife sent you and me to bring wood, and when we had brought the wood from the forest, and fastening the bundles on our heads went home, there was a storm and rain. And it rained very heavily, wet and dry places were inundated with water, and you got wet, and suffered great annoyance, and remained in the cold all night under a tree. Early in the morning, the divine preceptor came to search for us in the forest, and with the greatest kindness, and giving us his blessing took us both with him to his house. Sri Krishna Chand Ji after this again said, Brother, from the time you quitted our divine spiritual preceptor's house, I have not received any tidings of you, where you were, and what you were doing. By coming now and showing yourself, you have made me very happy, and have purified my house. Sudama replied, O sea of compassion and brother of the poor! O Master! Acquainted with the secrets of the heart, you know everything, there is nothing in the world, which is concealed from you. Part 9. Chapter 81. Sri Shukdev Jee said, O great king! Sri Krishna Ji, acquainted with the secrets of the heart, having heard Sudama's speech, and understanding what his many wishes were, said laughingly, Brother, what present has your wife sent for me? Why do you not give it to me, but keep it pressed down under your arm? Having heard this, O great king! Sudama was abashed, and his spirits began to droop, when Krishna hastily snatched the bundle of rice from under his arm. Having then opened it, and eaten 2 handfuls of rice with the greatest avidity, when he had taken the 3rd mouthful, Sri Rukmini Ji laid hold of the hand of Huri and said, O great king! You have given him 2 worlds, will you not keep some place for your own habitation? This seems to be a Brahmin of excellent disposition and very good family, a great religious ascetic, and one who has abandoned all terrestrial objects, because he has not exulted on obtaining wealth. I know, therefore, that he looks upon gain and loss alike, rejoices not at obtaining nor sorrows at losing. When Rukmini Ji had thus spoken, Sri Krishna Chand Ji said, Beloved, this is my best friend, how can I enumerate his many excellent qualities? He remains constantly immersed in the love of me. And in comparison with that love looks upon the pleasures of the world as grass. Having narrated thus much, Sri Shukdev Ji said to the Raja Purichit, O great king! Krishna, having addressed many speeches and explanations to Rukmini Ji, brought Sudama into the house, having after this entertained him with delicacies of all kinds, and given him betel, Huri took Sudama and placed him upon a bed like foam. He was fatigued and knocked up by the journey, and enjoyed a pleasant sleep upon the bed. Krishna having then sent for Vishwakarma, said, Go now and build a very beautiful house for Sudama of gold and jewels, and place in it the 8 fruits of ascetic severities, and the treasure of Kuvuru, consisting of 9 gems. In order that no desire of his may be unsatisfied. When Krishna had thus spoken, Vishwakarma went and built the house instantly, and returned, having mentioned to Krishna that he had done so, he went home. Early in the morning Sudama rose, and went to take leave of Krishna, after having bathed, and finished his religious meditations, adoration and worship. Sri Krishna Chand Ji was at that time quite unable to speak, but remained gazing immersed in affection, with downcast eyes, and stupefied. Sudama, having taken leave and made a salutation, went homewards, and on the road began to reflect, I did well in not asking Krishna for anything. Had I asked him he would certainly have given it, but he would have thought me greedy and avaricious. No matter, I shall be able to explain all the circumstances to my wife. Sri Krishna Chand Ji treated me with the greatest respect and honor, and considered me as free from avarice. This is for me equal to a lakh of rupees. With these thoughts in his mind Sudama, O great king! came near his village, and was surprised at not perceiving either his former residence, or broken hut, but a populous city like that of Indru's. On seeing this, Sudama was very much grieved, and began to say, Lord, what hast thou done? I had one affliction, and thou hast given me another. What has become of my cottage, and where has my wife gone? From whom shall I inquire, and where shall I search for them? Having thus said, Sudama went to the gate, and asked the doorkeeper, Whose is this very beautiful house? The doorkeeper replied, It belongs to Sudama, the friend of Sri Krishna Chand. When upon hearing this Sudama was on the point of speaking, his wife, who had seen him from the inside, came up to her husband, dressed in fine clothes and jewels, adorned from head to foot, having eaten betel, and applied perfumes, and accompanied by her female companions. Falling at his feet, she threw down silken cloths for him to walk upon, and, having joined her hands, thus spoke, Why are you standing there? Come into the house, and banish all anxiety from your mind. After you left, Vishwakarma came, who built this house in a second. O great king! When Sudama had heard his wife speak thus, he went into the house, and on seeing the great profusion of wealth, was very much dejected. The Brahmani said, Husband, people are rejoiced at obtaining riches, but you are sad. What is the reason of this? Please kindly tell me, that the perplexities of my mind may be removed. Sudama replied, Beloved, this wealth is very deceptive, it has deceived, is still deceiving and will continue to deceive the whole world. Krishna has bestowed it upon me, not having confidence in my affection, when have I asked it from him, that he has given it to me? This is why my mind is sad. The Brahmani said, Husband, you did not ask anything from Sri Krishna Chandji, but, being acquainted with the secrets of the heart, he knows the thoughts of each individual. In my mind there was a desire for wealth, which Krishna has satisfied. Do not form any other opinion in your mind upon this subject. Having recited thus much, Sri Shukdev Ji said to the Raja Purichit, O great king! Whoever shall hear and repeat this story, shall never, having come into the world, suffer any affliction, and in the end shall go to the celestial paradise. Chapter 82. Sri Shukdev Ji said, Raja, I will now relate the story of Krishna's journey to the country about Delhi. Listen with attention, how Sri Krishna Chand and Balram went to Korchitru to bathe on the occasion of an eclipse of the sun, accompanied by all the descendants of Judu. The Raja said, O great king! Be pleased to recite the story. I will listen with attention. Then Sri Shukdev Ji said, O great king! On one occasion, having obtained intelligence of an eclipse of the sun, Sri Krishna Chand and Baldev Ji having gone to Raja Oagarsan said, O great king! An eclipse of the sun has, after a long interval, occurred. It will be a very virtuous act, if you go to Korchitru, and hold this festival there. Because it is written in the Shastras, that whoever shall offer gifts or do acts of moral or religious merit at Korchitru, shall be deemed 1,000-fold excellent. On hearing these words, the descendants of Judu inquired from Sri Krishna Chandji, O great king! How did Korchitru become so eminent a place of pilgrimage? Be pleased to do us the favor to explain. Sri Krishna Ji replied, Listen, Jamdagan, the sage, was very wise, given to religious meditation, a strict performer of penance and of a glorious reputation. He had 3 sons, the eldest of whom was Parshuram, who having abandoned the pleasures of the world, went and dwelt in Chitrakoot, and began to perform penance in honor of Sudashivu. On the birth of his children, Jamdagan, the sage, having given up housekeeping and forsaken the world, went into the forest with his wife, and began to practice devout austerity. His wife's name was Renuka, who went one day to invite her sister, who was the wife of the Raja Suhasrajoran. When she had given the invitation, Raja Suhasrajoran's wife, the sister of Renuka, indulging in pride, said laughing, If sister, you can feed me in my army, give the invitation, otherwise do not give it. O great king! Having heard this, Renuka was annoyed and rising up thence without speaking a word came home. Perceiving that she was in low spirits, Jamdagan, the sage, inquired, What has happened today, that you are out of humor? Upon his making the inquiry, Renuka shedding tears, mentioned all the circumstances, as they had occurred. On hearing them, Jundagun, the sage, said to his wife, "Well, go now and invite your sister with her army." When Renuka received her husband's order, she went to her sister's house and invited her. The sister said to her husband, "You and I, together with our army, must go tomorrow to eat our food at the house of Jundagun, the sage." Having heard and assented to what his wife said, he laughed and was silent. Jundagun rose very early next morning and went to Raja Indru, and asked for the cow Kamdanu, and afterwards went and invited, and brought back with him the Raja Suhasrajoran. He came with his army, and Jundagun ji entertained them all with every kind of food they desired. When he and his army had eaten their food, Raja Suhasrajoran was very much ashamed and began to say to himself, "Whence has he obtained the means of feeding so many people during the night, and how he has prepared the food? I cannot understand the secret of all this." Having thus spoken, and taken leave, he went home, and dispatched a Brahmin, saying to him, "O divinity, go to the house of Jundagun, and bring me information, by whose power he has, in one day, invited and entertained me and my army." On hearing these words, the Brahmin went off quickly, and having made his observations came back, and said to Suhasrajoran, "O great king, the cow Kamdanu is in his house, through whose power he has been able to invite, and entertain you in the course of a day." Suhasrajoran said to the Brahmin, in reply to this intelligence, "O divinity, go from me, and say to Jundagun the sage, that I beg the cow Kamdanu from him." The Brahmin, on hearing these words, went with the message to the sage, and mentioned what Suhasrajoran had said. The sage replied, "The cow does not belong to me, that I can give it, it belongs to Raja Indru, and I cannot give it, go and tell your Raja so." Upon his saying this, the Brahmin came, and said to Raja Suhasrajoran, "O great king, the sage says that the cow Kamdanu is not his, but belongs to Raja Indru, and he cannot give it to you." When the Brahmin had thus spoken, Suhasrajoran sent for several of his warriors, and said to them, "Go now, and loosen and bring here from the house of Jundagun the cow Kamdanu." The warriors, on receiving their master's order, went to the sage's house, and when, after having loosened the cow, they carried it off in presence of Jundagun, the sage ran and stopped Kamdanu on the road. Having received intelligence of this, Suhasrajoran was enraged, and came and cut off the sage's head. Kamdanu ran off to Indru, and Renuka came stood near her husband's body. She rolled upon the ground, tearing her hair, and sat down, laying hold of his feet. She struck her breast, shedding tears, and calling tenderly upon her husband, poured forth lamentations. At that time, the guardian deities of the 10 quarters trembled, when they heard the cries and weeping of Renuka. And the seat of Parshuram shook, as he was engaged in penance, and his meditations were interrupted. On his meditations being disturbed, Parshuram, having reflected, took his axe, and came to the spot, where his father's corpse had fallen, and where his mother was standing, striking her breast. On seeing this, Parshuram ji became very wroth. And at the same time, Renuka explained with tears to her son all the circumstances of her husband's slaughter. When he had heard the account, Parshuram went to where Suhasrajoran was seated in the midst of his court, having first said to his mother, "Mother, I will first slay my father's enemy, and afterwards come and take up my father's body." On seeing the Raja, Parshuram ji said angrily, "O pitiless, cowardly, malicious enemy of your family! You have killed my father, and brought great grief upon me." When having thus spoken, Parshuram seized his axe, and advanced in great wrath. The Raja confronted him with a bow and arrows. The two strong men began a mighty contest. At length, after they had fought about 4 hours, Parshuram ji killed and overthrew Suhasrajoran, whose army then attacked him, and which he also destroyed near the Raja's body. He afterwards came thence, and performed his father's funeral obsequies, and having comforted his mother, Parshuram ji then offered sacrifice to Rudra at that place. And from that time, the place has been called, and become famous as a place of holy pilgrimage. Whoever goes there during an eclipse of the sun, and offers gifts, or bathes or performs penance or sacrifice, will receive a reward of 1,000-fold excellence. Having proceeded thus far in the narrative, Sri Shukdev Ji said to the Raja Purichit, O great king. On hearing this story, all the descendants of Jadoo were delighted, and said to Sri Krishna Chand Ji, O great king. Be pleased to go quickly to Korchetru, and do not now delay, because it is necessary to arrive there in time for the festival. On hearing this, Sri Krishna Chand and Bulram Ji inquired from the Raja Oagerson, who, O great king, will remain here to guard the city if all go to Korchetru? Raja Oagerson said, Leave Anrudra Ji and go. Having received the Raja's order, and having sent for and explained to Anrudra, Krishna said, Son, remain here, defend the cow and the Brahmin and protect the subject, I and the Raja Ji, and all the descendants of Jadoo will return, after having bathed at Korchetru. Anrudra Ji replied, I will act according to your order. Having, O great king, left Anrudra Ji only to guard the city, Sorsan, Basudio, Udo, Akror, Kritbrahma, and all the high and low descendants of Jadoo with their wives prepared to set out for Korchetru. When the Raja Oagerson encamped outside the city with his army, the whole party assembled together. And afterwards Sri Krishna Chand Ji joined them, accompanied by his brother's wife, 8 queens, 16,800 wives, and their sons and grandsons. Raja Oagerson decamped thence on Krishna's arrival, and advanced with great pomp and bustle, like Raja Indru. Having narrated thus much, Sri Shukdev Ji said, O great king. After a pleasant and safe journey of some days, Sri Krishna Chand and all the descendants of Jadoo arrived at Korchetru. And having gone there, they all bathed during the festival, and, each, to the utmost of his means, offered elephants, horses, roofs, pakis, dresses, jewels, ornaments, grain or money, and afterwards they all encamped there. O great king! Having heard of the journey of Sri Krishna Chand and Bulram Ji to Korchetru, Rajas from the 4 quarters came with their families and armies, and met them. Then all the Kauravas and Pandavas came there with their relatives and their troops. At that time Kunti and Draupadi went into the female apartments of the descendants of Jadoo, and had interviews with their wives. After this Kunti, having gone into her brother's presence, said, Brother, I am very unfortunate. From the very day I was betrothed I have been suffering affliction. You have not thought of me from the time you gave me in marriage. And Ram Krishna, who is the bestower of happiness upon all, has not shown any kindness towards me. On hearing these words, O great king, Basudio Ji, taking compassion on her, said, his eyes being filled with tears, Sister, what dost thou say to me? I have had no control in these matters, the condition or circumstances of fate are not known. The will of Huri is very powerful, behold. What griefs I endured at the hands of Kunds. The whole world has become subservient to Krishna, behold. Whatever griefs one may suffer, the universe is put into circular motion. O great king! Having thus spoken, and having entered into explanations with his sister, Basudio Ji went to the place, where all the Rajas were seated in the court of Raja Oagerson and Raja Dorjadhan and other great Rajas. And the Pandavas were doing honor to Oagerson, Raja. You are very fortunate in constantly beholding Sri Krishna Chand, and obliterating the sins of each birth. The Lord, whom Shivu, Brahmu and all the other gods wander about seeking, continually protects you. The Huri, whose mysteries yogis and sages, or whose passions are under complete subjection, and saints and wise men cannot discover, comes to receive your orders, and he, who is God of the whole world, bows his head to you. Having related thus much of the history, Sri Shukdev Ji said, O great king! All the Rajas having come were thus applauding Raja Oagerson, and he, with great propriety, pleased and satisfied them all. In the meanwhile, having heard of the arrival of Sri Krishna and Bulram Ji, Nand and Oapnand came, accompanied by their relations and all the cowherdesses and cowherds, and their children. When they were at leisure after bathing and offering gifts, Nand Ji went to the place, where Basudio and Devaki were living with their son, in a state of ease and enjoyment. On seeing them, Basudio Ji rose and met them. And mutually expressing and feeling affection, they were as happy as a man would be, who had found a lost thing. Basudeo Ji then mentioned to Nand Rai all that had transpired at Bruj formerly, how Nand Rai Ji had brought up Sri Krishna and Balaram. On hearing this account, O great king, Nand Rai Ji's eyes filled with tears, and he remained gazing on the face of Basudeo. At that time, Sri Krishna and Baldeo, having, with all becoming propriety, performed obeisance and salutation, first to Nand and Jasoda Ji, went afterwards and had a meeting with the cowherds' children. The cowherdesses came there, and gazed upon the moonlike countenance of Huri, and delighted their partridge-like eyes, that is, their eyes, which gazed at Krishna, in the same manner as the eyes of the chukor, or Greek partridge, gazes at the moon, of which the bird is said to be enamored, and received the fruit, or the greatest enjoyment of their lives. Having narrated thus much, Sri Shukdeo Ji said, O great king, I cannot describe the love displayed by Nand, Oapnand, Jasoda, the cowherdesses, the cowherds and their children on meeting with Basudeo, Devaki, Rani, Sri Krishna and Balaram. It must have been witnessed to be understood. At length, seeing that they were all greatly agitated by their affection, Sri Krishna Chand Ji said, Listen. Whatever mortal shall have faith in me, shall be fearlessly carried across the sea of existence. You have made an offering of your bodies, minds and wealth, and have looked upon me with a never-ending affection. No one is equal to you in good fortune, not Brahmu, Rudru, Indru or anyone else, whoever he be. I have not come into the meditations of Shivu, but have dwelt with you, and constantly increased my affection. I dwell in the body of each individual. What I now say is incomprehensible and unfathomable, as light, water, fire, earth and air abide in the body, so also my splendor dwells in the human form. Sri Shukdeo Ji said, O great king. When Sri Krishna Chand had mentioned all these mysteries, all the inhabitants of Bruj recovered their confidence. Chapter 83. Sri Shukdeo Ji said, O great king. Listen, whilst I gave an account of the conversations which passed between Draupadi and the wives of Sri Krishna Chand Ji. One day the wives of the Kauravas and Pandavas were sitting with the wives of Sri Krishna Chand Ji, and were celebrating the exploits and good qualities of Krishna. Upon something being said in conversation, Draupadi said to Sri Rukmini Ji, Say, O beautiful Rukmini, how didst thou obtain Sri Krishna Chand Ji? Sri Rukmini replied, Listen attentively, O Draupadi. How Krishna carried his scheme into execution. My father's wish was to give his daughter to Sri Krishna Chand, and my brother had set his mind upon giving me to Raja Sasupal, who came with a marriage procession to celebrate the marriage. And I sent a Brahmin and invited Sri Krishna Chand Ji. On the marriage day, as I returned home after having offered adoration to Devi, Sri Krishna Chand Ji having carried me off from the midst of the army of the demons, seated me on his chariot and pursued his journey homewards. Having afterwards received intelligence of this event, the whole army of demons came and made a violent attack upon Huri, who easily slew and put them to flight. He then set out for Dwarka, taking me with him. On our arrival there, Raja Soagarsan, Sorsan and Basudeo Ji married me to Sri Krishna Chand, according to the prescribed injunctions of the Vedas, and, having heard the news of the marriage, my father gave me a most liberal dowry. Having recited thus much, Sri Shukdeo Ji said to the Raja Purichit, O great king. Draupadi Ji made inquiries, similar to that she had made from Sri Rukmini, from Satbhama, Jamwati, Kalindi, Budru, Sutya, Mitrabinda, Lukmuna, and the 16,800 queens of Sri Krishna Chand. And each explained all the circumstances and the history of her marriage. Chapter 84. Sri Shukdeo Ji said, O great king. Listen with attention, while I relate the story of the coming of all the sages, and of the performing of sacrifice by Basudeo Ji. One day Rajas Oagarsan and Sorsan, Basudeo, Sri Krishna and Balaram were seated in full assembly with all the descendants of Jadu, and the kings of other countries were also present. At this time Bias, Bhushisht, Bishwamitra Bamdeo, Purashar, Bhrigu, Pulask, Berduaj, Markandeyu and 88,000 other sages, having a desire to see Sri Krishna Chand, the root of joy, came there, and Narad-ji also came with them. On seeing them, the whole court rose up. And then, having performed obeisance, and thrown down silken cloths for them to walk upon, they conducted all the sages into the assembly, after this Sri Krishna Chand having placed them all upon seats. And having washed their feet drank the water with which their feet had been washed, and sprinkled it upon the whole assembly. Then having offered sandal, unbroken rice, flowers, perfumes, lamps and consecrated food, Bhagwan worshipped them all, and went round to the right by way of adoration. And, standing in their presence with joined hands, Huri said, "Great is our good fortune that you have come and visited us, and sat in our house. The sight of a good man is equal to bathing in the Ganges. He who has seen a holy man, or received a visit from a holy man, has had the crime of each birth effaced." Having proceeded thus far in the narrative, Sri Shukdev Ji said, "O great king." When Sri Bhagwan had thus spoken, then all the sages remained reflecting, when the Lord, who is in the form of light, and the creator of the universe, says this, what need we care what anyone else may say, or has said? Whilst the sages thought thus in their minds, Narad-ji said, "Listen to me all ye of the assembly with attention, the delusive power of Huri cannot be comprehended. This power, in the form of Brahma, creates, as Vishnu, it preserves. As Shivu, it destroys, its nature is infinite, beyond the comprehension of man's intellect. But by his favor we know so much, that Vishnu frequently descends upon the earth to confer happiness upon holy men, destroy the wicked and promote what is eternally right. When, O great king." Having thus spoken, Narad-ji was on the point of rising up and leaving the assembly. Vasudeva came before him, and, with joined hands and with submissiveness, said, "O chief of the sages, be pleased to favor us by saying, how a man, having come into the world, can escape from fate. O great king." When Vasudeva Ji had thus spoken, all the holy men and sages remained looking at the countenance of Narad-ji. Then Narad-ji, understanding the wishes of their minds, said to the sages, "O divinities, be not astonished at this speech. The delusive power of Sri Krishna is mighty, it has overcome and conquered the whole world, and therefore Vasudeva Ji has thus spoken, and someone else has also thus said, near whom, whoever remains. He is under the influence of his good qualities, and subjected to the illusion of his glory, without being aware of it. As anyone living on the banks of the Ganges, who goes elsewhere, and, having abandoned the Ganges, drinks well water, so have the Judus become unintelligent, and do not comprehend at all the nature of Krishna." Narad-ji, having by these words removed the perplexities of the sages, said to Vasudeva Ji, "O great king, it is written in the Shastras, that the man, who performs pilgrimage, makes offerings, or performs penance, or fasts or offers sacrifice, having escaped from the bonds of the world, will obtain supreme felicity." On hearing these words, Vasudeva Ji was delighted, and immediately procured and made ready all things necessary for a sacrifice, and said to the saints and sages, "Please favor me by commencing the sacrifice." When, O great king, Vasudeva Ji had thus spoken, all the Brahmins prepared and arranged a building for the sacrifice. Upon this Vasudeva Ji went and sat with his wives near the altar, and all the Rajas and the Judus prepared to assist in the sacrifice. Having proceeded thus far in the narrative, Sri Shukdev Ji said to the Raja, "O great king." When Vasudeva went and sat at the altar, the sages began the sacrifice according to the injunctions of the Vedas. And, after reading incantations from the Vedas, they began to offer oblations with fire to the deities, and the gods in bodily shape came running to receive them. When, O great king, the sacrifice was begun. Above, the celestial choristers and musicians, playing upon pipes and drums, began to sing of the excellences of the gods, and bards and panegyrists to celebrate their praises. Orbasi and the other celestial courtesans danced. And the gods, seated in their chariots, rained down flowers, and below, the singers and dancers sang and danced, and engaged in festivities, and beggars raised cries of exultation and rejoicing, in midst of which the sacrifice was completed. And Vasudeva Ji, having offered the final oblation and arrayed the Brahmins in silken clothes, and adorned them with ornaments, presented them with many jewels, and much wealth, and they read incantations from the Vedas, and pronounced their blessing. After this, Vasudeva presented robes to, and entertained the kings of different countries, who then offered the sacrificial gifts, and taking leave, returned home. On the departure of the Rajas, all the sages and saints and Narad Ji also took leave. It is not possible to describe the subsequent scene, when Nand Rai Ji and the cowherdesses, and the cowherds and their children were about to take leave of Vasudeva. The descendants of Jadu, on the one hand, made all kinds of affectionate speeches, and the inhabitants of Bruj, on the other hand, did so likewise. This happy scene must have been witnessed to be understood, I cannot attempt to describe it. At length, Vasudeva and Sri Krishna, and Balram, having entered into explanations with Nand Rai Ji and the rest of the party, and made them understand, and having arrayed them in honorary dresses, and bestowed great wealth upon them, allowed them to take leave. Having recited thus much of the narrative, Sri Shukdev Ji said, O great king! When Sri Krishna Chand and Balram Ji returned to the city of Dwarka with the rest of the party, after having bathed during the festival, and offered sacrifice, there were rejoicings and festivities in every house. Chapter 85. Sri Shukdev Ji said, O great king! One day in the city of Dwarka, when Sri Krishna Chand and Balram went to Vasudeva Ji, he, on seeing the two brothers, rose and stood up, reflecting in his mind, that at Korchitru, Narad Ji had said, that Sri Krishna Chand is the creator of the world. And joining his hands Vasudeva said, O Lord! Unseen, invisible and imperishable. Lakshmi has become your handmaid, and constantly attends upon you. You are the God of all the gods, no one understands your nature. Your splendor is in the moon, the sun, the earth and the sky, you shine in every place, your delusive power is very mighty, it has led astray the whole world. In the three worlds, there is no god, man or sage, who can escape from its influence. Having thus spoken, Vasudeva Ji again said, Lord! No one comprehends the mysteries of your state, in the Vedas they are described as unfathomable, you have neither enemies nor friends, nor are sons, father and brothers dear to you. You have descended upon the earth to remove its burthens, and, for the sake of men, have assumed many different semblances. O great king! Having thus spoken, Vasudeva Ji said, O sea of compassion and brother of the poor! In the same manner as thou hast saved many sinners, compassionately grant me salvation also, in order that having crossed the sea of existence, I may sing of thy excellent attributes. Sri Krishna Chand replied, Father! You are wise, why do you exalt your sons? Think a little in your mind that the acts of Bhagavat are infinite, no one has to this day ascertained the limits of them. Behold! He shines in every mortal frame, and therefore the world calls him, the being without passions or human qualities. He creates, he destroys, he remains mixed with the world, but can never be bound by it. Earth, sky, air, water and fire, the five elements of the body, in them all the power of the Lord abides. The sacred precepts of the Vedas have declared this. O great king! On hearing these words from the mouth of Sri Krishna Chand Ji, Vasudeva, being under the influence of fascination, was silent and remained gazing on the countenance of Huri. Then Krishna went thence to his mother, and on seeing her son, Devaki Ji said, O Sri Krishna Chand, the root of joy! One grief at times pierces me. Krishna inquired, what it was. Devaki Ji replied, Son! Grief for the loss of your 6 elder brothers, whom Kans destroyed, never departs from my mind. Sri Shukdev Ji said, O great king! On his saying this, Sri Krishna Chand Ji went to the regions below, having first said to his mother, Mourn not now, I will bring my brothers here immediately. When Raja Buli received intelligence of Krishna's arrival, he came out to meet him. And, having with great pomp and preparation, spread silken cloths for him to walk upon, escorted him to his own abode. Having afterwards seated him on a throne, and put sandal, unbroken rice and flowers upon his forehead, and placed before him perfumes, lamps and consecrated food. Raja Buli worshipped Sri Krishna Chand, then standing before him with joined hands and glorifying him greatly, he said, "O great king! Why have you come here?" Huri replied, "Raja, in the age of truth, or in the good age, there was a sage named Murich, a great, religious student, wise, a speaker of the truth and a devout worshipper of Huri. His wife's name was Orna, who had 6 sons. One day, the 6 brothers in their youthful state having gone before the Raja, the lord of subjects, laughed. Observing that they laughed, the Raja was very angry, and pronounced this curse, "Go, and descend upon the earth as demons. O great king!" On hearing this curse, the sage's sons were greatly alarmed, and went and fell at the feet of the Raja. And having beseeched him greatly said, with the utmost humility, "O sea of compassion! You have pronounced a curse, but be pleased to favor us by saying, when we shall be liberated from it." Having heard their humble speech, the Raja taking compassion upon them, said, "When you see Sri Krishna Chand, you will be released. O great king!" On his saying this, they gave up the ghost, and became the sons of Hiranyakuz. Then they were born as the sons of Basudeo, whom Kunz came and murdered. On their being slain, the delusive power brought them here, and, conferring happiness, placed them in this abode. Their mother Devaki mourns for them. For this reason, I am come here, that I may take away my brothers with me and present them to my mother, and remove the anxiety of her mind. Sri Shukdeo Ji said, "Raja." When Huri had thus spoken, Raja Buli brought and gave him the 6 children, and placed before him many presents. Then Krishna came thence with his brothers to his mother, who, on seeing her sons, was highly delighted. When the inhabitants heard this, there was joy throughout the city, and the curse pronounced upon the sons terminated. Chapter 86. Sri Shukdeo Jee said, "Raja, I will now relate how Arjun carried off Sri Krishna Chand Ji's sister, Subhudra, from Dwarka. And how Sri Krishna Chand went and abode in Mithila. Listen with attention, when Devaki's daughter, whose name was Subhudra, and who was younger than Sri Krishna Ji, was marriageable. Basudeo Ji having invited several of the descendants of Jadu, and Sri Krishna and Balram said, "The girl is now of a fit age to be married, to whom shall we give her?" Balram Ji replied, "It is said, that we ought to contract marriage, enmity and friendship with equals. One thing occurs to me, that we ought to marry this girl to Dorjadhan, and obtain renown and greatness in the world." Sri Krishna Chand said, "In my opinion, we shall obtain a high reputation in the world by giving her to Arjun." Sri Shukdeo Ji said, "O great king!" On Balram speaking, no one uttered a word. But when Sri Krishna Chand Ji had spoken, all exclaimed, "It is most advisable to marry the girl to Arjun." Balram Ji was offended at hearing this, and rose up and went away. And the party present, observing that he was offended, remained silent. When Arjun afterwards received information of these circumstances, he assumed the disguise of a religious mendicant, and, taking a staff and wooden pot went to Dwarka. And, having selected a convenient spot spread a deer's skin, and sat upon it, he remained thus for 4 months during the whole reigns, and no one discovered his secret purpose. Looking upon him as a guest, they all paid him attention. And, for the sake of Vishnu, entertained affection for him. Krishna knew all his secrets, but did not reveal them to any one. O great king! One day Baldeo Ji also invited and brought with him Arjun to an entertainment at Ibis' house. When Arjun sat down to eat, he beheld Subhudra, with a body like the moon, and eyes like the deer. On seeing her Arjun was fascinated. And, avoiding the gaze of all, began to look upon her with averted glance, and thought to himself, "When will Brahma accomplish what is destined in my fate?" Whilst on the other hand Subhudra Ji, pleased with the brilliancy of his countenance, was saying to herself, "He is some prince and not a religious mendicant, why is he sad?" Having thus spoken, Subhudra Ji went into the house and began to think of obtaining a husband. And on the other hand, Arjun, after he had finished eating, came to his seat, and was occupied with all kinds of anxieties as to how he should gain possession of his beloved. Some days afterwards, on the occasion of the festival of Shivarat, all the inhabitants of the city, male and female, went outside the city to worship Shivu. Subhudra went there also with her female companions and attendants. Having heard of her going, Arjun mounted his chariot, and taking his bow and arrows, went there and was ready. Whilst, O great king, Subhudra was returning with her female friends after having worshipped Shivu, Arjun at sight of her abandoned all reserve and modesty, and seizing her by the hand, lifted her into his chariot, and went off. Balaram was greatly enraged. When he heard of it, he took his plough and wooden pestle on his shoulder, his eyes were bloodshot, he spoke in a voice of thunder. I will now go and utterly destroy him, and will lift up the world and place it upon my forehead. How shall a beggar carry off my beloved sister, Subhudra? Wheresoever I may catch this religious mendicant, I will destroy him, and search out and utterly destroy all his family. O great king! Balaram ji continued to make many idle and very angry speeches, when, having heard what had occurred, Purdiyoman, Anrudru, Sambhu and other noble descendants of Jadoo came into the presence of Baldio ji, and said with joined hands, O great king! If you give us the order, we will lay hold of, and bring your enemy here. Having proceeded thus far in the narrative, Sri Shukdev ji said, O great king! When Balaram, taking all the descendants of Jadoo with him, was ready to go in pursuit of Arjun, Sri Krishna Chand went and explained to Baldio all the secrets connected with the carrying off Subhudra. And said in a tone of the greatest submissiveness, Brother Arjun, in the first place, is the son of our paternal aunt, and in the second, he is my greatest friend. He has committed this act heedlessly, and without due thought. But it is not at all right for us to fight with him. This would be contrary to religion, and contrary to the custom of the world. And whoever might hear of our fighting would say, that the friendship of the descendants of Jadoo is like a wall of sand. On hearing these words, Balaram ji beating his head, and being greatly enraged said, Brother, this is a common custom with you to raise a fire, and then run for water. Otherwise, if you had not taken part in the business, what power had Arjun to carry off my sister? Having thus spoken, Balaram ji suffered great regret, and was very angry, and looking at his brother dashed his plough and wooden pestle on the ground, and sat down, and all the descendants of Jadoo sat down also with him. Sri Shukdev ji said, Raja. Whilst Sri Krishna Chand entered into explanations with them all, Arjun went home and married Subhudra, in the manner prescribed by the Vedas. On receiving intelligence of the marriage, Sri Krishna and Balaram ji sent off to Hastinapur, in charge of a Brahmin, clothes, jewels, male and female servants, elephants, horses, chariots and a large sum of money. Afterwards Sri Murari, the friend of his worshippers, mounted his chariot and went to Mithila, where there were two worshippers of his, named Sutdeo and Bahulas, the one a Raja, and the other a Brahmin. O great king! On Krishna's departure, Narad, Bamdeo, Bias, Atri, Pershuram, and many other sages came and accompanied Sri Krishna Chand Jo. Whatever countries Krishna passed through, the Rajas of them came out to meet him, and worshipped him, and gave him presents. At length, after a journey of some days, Krishna arrived there. When they heard of Huri's arrival, the two worshippers rose up, and came running hastily to him with presents. During their interview with Krishna, they both placed their presents before him. And, making obeisance, and standing in his presence with joined hands, said, with the utmost submissiveness, O sea of compassion and brother of the poor! You have shown great mercy, in having allowed sinners like us to see you, and thereby made us pure, and put an end to our being born and dying. Having recited thus much of the history, Sri Shukdev ji said, O great king! Sri Krishna Chand, acquainted with the secrets of the heart, having beheld the sincere faith of those two worshippers, assumed two bodily forms, and went and dwelt in the houses of both. They entertained and amused him in an agreeable manner. And Huri made a stay of some days, and made them exceedingly happy. After this, when Krishna, having gratified all their wishes, and increased their knowledge, went to Dwarka. The sages and saints took leave of him on the road, and Huri went and abode happily at Dwarka. Chapter 87. Having heard so much of the narrative, Raja Purichat said to Sri Shukdev Ji, O great king. You said, on a former occasion, that the Vedas glorified the supreme deity. Explain to me, in order that the doubts of my mind may be removed, how the Vedas offered praise to the broom without passions or human qualities. Sri Shukdev Ji replied, O great king. The Lord, who is the author of the intellect, of the organs of action and perception, of the mind, soul, religious and moral merit, wealth, desire and salvation, constantly remains in a passionless form, without human qualities. But when he creates the world, he is possessed of all qualities, and assumes his own natural form. For this reason, that one deity is both without, and with passions and qualities. Having thus said, Shukdev, the sage, added, Raja. Narad Ji on one occasion asked Nirnarayan the question you have now asked me. Raja Purichat said, O great king. Please explain this subject to me, that the perplexities of my mind may be removed. Shukdev Ji replied, Raja. Once on a time during the age of truth, Narad Ji went into the world of truth, that is, the world of the virtuous age, to the place where Nirnarayan was sitting engaged with many other sages in devout religious austerities, and inquired. O great king! Be pleased to do me the favor to say, how the Vedas glorify the incorporeal broom. Nirnarayan said, Hear me Narad. The perplexity, which you have asked me to explain, is the same as occurred in the world of mortals, at a place where Sanatan and other sages were seated, occupied with religious penance. Sanandan, a sage, then narrated a story, and entirely removed the doubts of all present. Narad Ji said, O great king! I also dwell there, and if this story had been told, I should have heard it. Nirnarayan said, Narad Ji. This story was told, when you had gone to the White Island to visit Bhagwat and, therefore, you did not hear it. Having heard this, Narad Ji said, O great king! Kindly inform me what story was related there. Nirnarayan replied, Listen. Narad, when the sages asked this question, Sanandan, the saint, began to say to them, Listen to me. At the time of the general destruction, when 14 worlds became the semblance of water, then the complete broom remained alone asleep, when Bhagwan wished to create the world, the Vedas having come forth from his breath and joined their hands. Sang praises to him, just as bards, by singing songs of eulogy of his renown very early in the morning, might awaken a Raja, who was asleep in his own house. In order, that being awake, he might quickly perform any business he had to do. Having proceeded thus far in the story, Nirnarayan added, Listen to me, O Narad. The Vedas having come forth from the mouth of the Lord were saying, O Lord! Awake quickly and create the world, and remove your deceptive power far from the minds of animated beings, then they will recognize your appearance, your deceptive power is predominant, and deprives all beings of intelligence. The being who escapes from it, will have knowledge to understand you. O Lord! No one except you can reduce this power to subjection. He, in whose breast you dwell in the form of knowledge, overcomes this deceptive power. Otherwise, who has ability to escape from the influence of this power? You are the creator of all animated beings, having derived their origin from you, are contained in you. Just as many things being produced from the earth, are again mixed up in the earth. Whoever worships or glorifies any god whatsoever, worships and glorifies you, just as a man may make many ornaments of gold, and give them various names, but it is still gold, so you have many forms. And consider this point, that not one of those forms is anything, and that on what side soever we look, there you are presented to our sight. O Lord! Your deceptive power is infinite. This power becoming the three qualities of truth, passion and darkness, having assumed three forms, and created the universe, preserves and destroys it, no one has discovered its mystery, and no one ever will discover it. Wherefore, it is right for an animated being to abandon all desires and meditate upon you, his welfare depends upon his doing so. O great king! Having proceeded thus far in his story, Nirnarayan said to Narad, Narad. When Sanandan, the sage, having related this history of a former age, had removed the perplexities of all their minds, then Sunak and the other sages offered worship to Sanandan according to the sacred precepts of the Vedas. Having related thus much of the history, Sri Shukdev ji said, Raja, whoever shall hear this conversation of Narayan and Narad, shall without doubt obtain the fulfillment of all his desires, and be saved hereafter. The account of the complete broom, which the Vedas sang of, Sanandan, the sage, recited to Sunak and other saints, then Narayan related it before Narad, and Bias obtained it from Narad. And Bias explained it to me, and I have now mentioned it to you. Whoever shall hear or relate this history, shall obtain whatever benefits he desires, whatever virtue there is in penance, sacrifice, gifts, fasting and pilgrimage, there is the same merit in reciting and hearing this history. Chapter 88. Sri Shukdev ji said, O great king! The works of Bhagavad are wonderful, every one knows this, whoever worships Huri will be poor, and by serving other gods, a man will be rich. Compare the state and habits of Huri and Mahadev. One is the husband of Lakshmi, the other of Devi, the one wears a garland of flowers, the other, a necklace of skulls, the former has a quoit in his hand, the latter a trident, one supports the earth, the other, the Ganges. One plays upon a pipe, the other, upon a cow's horn, one is lord of the celestial paradise, the other, an inhabitant of Kailas, the former besmears his body with sandal, the latter rubs ashes on it, one wears cloth, the other, a tiger's skin. One reads the Vedas, the other, the science of astrology, one rides upon the sovereign of the feathered race, the other, upon the bull Nundi, one dwells among cowherds' children, the other, amongst ghosts and goblins. The habits and nature of each of the two lords are the reverse of those of the other. Fix your affections on either of the two according to the nature of your desires. Having recited thus much of the history, Sri Shukdev ji said, O great king! Sri Krishna said to the Raja Yudhisthira, O Yudhisthira! I destroy by degrees all the wealth of him, to whom I show favor, because brothers, wives, sons and relations abandon the poor, and then a spirit of devotion springs up in their minds. And, from being occupied in religious devotion, they, having abandoned the fascinations of riches and the world, become free from all attachments, and worship me with zealous attention, and through the glory of their adoration, obtain an everlasting emancipation from matter, and a reunion with the deity. After having thus spoken, Shukdev ji added, O great king! By worshipping other gods, the desires of the mind are fulfilled, but final salvation is not obtained. After having related this story, the sage said to Raja Purichat, O great king! On one occasion as Bhikasur, the son of Kusip, came out of his house, desiring to perform penance, he met Narad, the sage, on the road. On seeing Narad ji he made a salutation. And, standing before him with joined hands, inquired, with the utmost humility, O great king! Which of the three deities Brahma, Vishnu or Mahadev grants boons most quickly, do me the kindness to say, in order that I may practice devout austerities in his honor. Narad ji replied, Listen Bhikasur. Amongst these three deities, Mahadev is the greatest grantayer of boons, he neither loves delay, nor is he easily angry. Behold! Shivuji, being delighted at the performance on his part of a slight penance, gave 1,000 arms to Suhasrajoran, and destroyed him, being enraged at a slight fault he had committed. Narad, the sage, having thus spoken went away. And Bhikasur began, when he came home, to perform severe penance and offer up sacrifice in honor of Mahadev. In the course of 7 days, he cut off with a knife, and offered as a burnt offering all the flesh of his body. On the 8th day, when he resolved to cut off his head, Bholanath came, and having laid hold of his hand said, I have been highly pleased with thee, ask for me whatever boon thou desirest, and I will now grant it to thee. When Shivuji had thus spoken, Bhikasur, with joined hands, replied, Be pleased, O Lord, to take compassion upon me, and now grant me this boon, that on whose head soever I may place my hand, he may be reduced to ashes instantaneously. On his uttering these words, Mahadev ji granted him the boon he had asked, which when he had obtained, he went to put his hand upon Shivu's head. Mahadeo was alarmed, and quitted his seat and fled, and the demon also ran after him, and carried on a close pursuit of Sudashivu. At length Mahadeo went in a state of very great agitation to Vishnu's heaven. Seeing that he was greatly afflicted, Sri Murari, the friend of his worshippers, the Lord of Paradise, the abode of mercy, took compassion upon him, and assuming the appearance of a Brahmin went before Bhaikasur and said, O Prince of Demons! Explain to me why you toil in pursuit of Shivu. On hearing this question, Bhaikasur explained all that had occurred. Then Bhagwan said, O Chief of Demons! It is very strange that an intelligent person like you should commit error, who believes anything to be true, which this naked, mad jogi says, who eats bang and thorn-apple. He constantly dwells in cemeteries, rubbing his body with ashes, and having snakes twisted round him, assuming a terrifying appearance, and accompanied by ghosts and goblins, who will believe what he says. Sri Narayan proceeded to say, O Chief of Demons! If you think that what I have said is untrue, place your hand on your own head and see. O great king! On hearing the Lord speak thus, when Bhaikasur, who was deprived of sense through the influence of the delusive power, placed his hand upon his own head, he was burnt up, and became a heap of ashes. There were musical rejoicings in the capital of Indru on the death of the demon, and the gods, raising shouts of victory and exultation, began to rain down flowers. The celestial dancers, musicians and choristers celebrated in songs the excellent attributes of Huri, who, having at that time, greatly glorified Mahadeo, allowed him to take leave, and granted Bhaikasur salvation. Sri Shukdeo Ji said, O great king! Whosoever shall hear or recite this story, shall doubtlessly obtain beatitude by the favor of Huri and Mahadeo. Chapter 89. Sri Shukdeo Jee said, O great king! On one occasion all the sages and saints were sitting on the banks of the Saraswati engaged in devout austerities and religious sacrifice, when one of them asked the others to do him the favor to say, which was greatest of the three divinities? Brahmu, Vishnu, or Ganeshu? Upon this one said Shivu, another, Vishnu, and a third, Brahmu, but they did not all agree in pointing out one of the three as the greatest. Then several great saints and sages said, We will not be satisfied with any opinions thus expressed. But if any one will go and make trial of these three deities, and pronounce one of them to be virtue, religion and justice personified, we will believe what he says to be true. They all assented to this proposal, and directed Bhrigu, the son of Brahmu, to make trial of the three deities and return. When Bhrigu, the sage, had obtained the order, he went first to the world of Brahmu, and sat in silence in Brahmu's court. He did not make any salutation, nor did he offer praises, nor go round to the right hand by way of adoration. When Brahmu, O Raja, saw the impropriety of his son's conduct, he was very angry, and on the point of cursing him, but abstained through a feeling of natural affection for his son. Then Bhrigu, having seen Brahmu powerless through the property of passion, rose up thence, and went to Kailas, and remained standing at the abode of Shivu and Parvati. Shivuji rose on seeing him, and when he extended his arms to embrace him, Bhrigu sat down, at which Shivuji was greatly enraged, and took up his trident to kill him. Sri Parvati then interceded very earnestly for him. And having fallen at the feet of Mahadeo Ji explained to him, and said, This is your younger brother, be pleased to forgive his fault. It is said, if a child commits a fault, a holy man will not think anything of it. O great king! When Parvati Ji had cooled the anger of Shivu by her explanations, Bhrigu, having seen Mahadeo Ji, absorbed in the property of darkness, rose up and went away. He then went to Indru's heaven, where Bhagwan was sleeping with Lakshmi on a bed of flowers, spread on a bedstead of gold, with curtains and covered with jewels. On going there Bhrigu gave Bhagwan such a kick in the breast that he started up from sleep. When Huri saw the sage, he left Lakshmi, and came down from his couch. And fixing his eyes upon the head and feet of Bhrigu began to rub them, and thus address him, O chief of the sages. Be pleased to forgive my fault, I have unintentionally hurt your soft lotus-like feet with my hard breast, be pleased not to think of this offense of mine. When Vishnu, the Lord, had thus spoken, Bhrigu was highly delighted, and having glorified Bhagwan took leave and came thence to the banks of the Saraswati, where all the saints and sages were sitting. On his arrival Bhrigu related every circumstance exactly as it had occurred. In his visits to the three deities, Brahma clings to the property of passion, Mahadeo is impregnated with the property of darkness. Vishnu is chief amongst the virtuous, no other god is greater than he. The doubts of the sages disappeared on hearing this, and joy was in the minds of all. All applauded Vishnu and established in their breasts a faith in him not to be shaken. Having proceeded thus far in the narrative, Sri Shukdev said to the Raja Purichat, O great king, I will relate an intermediate story, listen with attention. Raja Oagarsan ruled justly and virtuously in the city of Dwarka, and Sri Krishna Chand and Balram were obedient to his orders. Under the government of the Raja all were attentive to their own duty, and carried on business with intelligence, and lived happily and agreeably. A Brahmin dwelt there also, who was a very well-disposed and virtuous man. It so happened that one of his sons died, and he took his dead son and went to the gate of Raja Oagarsan, and began to say whatever came uppermost, Your subjects are oppressed by the acts of your government. And my son has also died through your sin. Having, O great king, made many speeches of this kind, and left the corpse of his son at the Raja's gate, the Brahmin came home. He afterwards had 8 sons, and in like manner left all the 8 at the Raja's gate. When the 9th was about to be born, the Brahmin went again to the court of Raja Oagarsan, and standing up in the presence of Sri Krishna Chandji, calling to mind his grief for the death of his sons, and shedding tears began to say, There is a curse on the Raja and on his government, and accursed are they who minister to this unjust tyrant. And there is a curse upon me for living in this city. Had I not dwelt in the country of these sinners my sons would have escaped. Through their want of religion and virtue my sons have died, and no one has protected them. He, O great king, uttered many expressions of this kind, standing up in the court and weeping, but no one made any reply. At length Arjun, sitting near Sri Krishna Chand, and hearing what was said was perplexed in his mind, and said, O deity, in whose presence have you thus spoken, and why are you thus afflicted? There is no archer in this court, who can drive away your grief. Modern Rajas are selfish, and not men, who prevent the afflictions of others, and confer happiness on their subjects, and protect the cow and Brahmin. Arjun proceeded to say to the Brahmin, O divinity, go now, and remain in your house, free from all care. When your child shall be about to be born, come to me, and I will go with you, and will not allow the child to die. On hearing these words, the Brahmin was angry and said, I do not see any powerful man in this court, with exception of Sri Krishna, Balram, Pradyoman and Anrudra, who could rescue my son from the hand of death. Arjun replied, Brahmin, thou dost not know me, that my name is Dhananjay. I make a compact with thee, that if I do not rescue thy son from the hand of death, I will bring from whatever quarter I may find them thy deceased sons, and show them to thee. And if I do not obtain them, I will burn myself in fire together with the cow. Bow, Jbh, Gandhib. When, O great king, Arjun having made this compact, had thus spoken, the Brahmin was satisfied, and went to his home. Afterwards when the child was about to be born, the Brahmin came to Arjun, who rose up and went with him, taking his bow and arrows, and having gone to the Brahmin's house, so thatched it with arrows that even air could not have access between the arrows, and he began to walk round the house himself in every direction, with his bow and arrows in his hand. Having proceeded thus far in the narrative, Sri Shukdev said to the Raja Purichat, O great king, Arjun formed many plans for saving the child, but it was not saved. On another day he was weeping at the time of the child's expected birth. On that day the child did not even breathe, but came forth dead from the womb. Arjun having heard of the child having come forth dead was ashamed, and went to Sri Krishna Chand, and the Brahmin went after him. The Brahmin came crying, and began to say, Arjun, a curse is upon thee, and thy life for showing thy face in the world, after having spoken falsely, O eunuch. If you could not save my child from death, why did you make an agreement to do so, and to bring and show me my other deceased sons? if you could not save this one. On hearing these words, O great king! Arjun rose up, and taking his bow and arrows, went thence, to the capital of Jin to Dhuramraj, who stood up on seeing him, and joining his hands, and eulogizing Arjun, said, O great king! For what reason have you come here? Arjun replied, I have come to take away with me the sons of a certain Brahmin. Dhuramraj said, Those children are not here. When Dhuramraj had thus spoken, Arjun departed thence, and wandered over all places, but did not find the Brahmin's children. At length, he came to the city of Dwarka in a state of grief and regret. And, having erected a funeral pile, prepared to be burnt upon it with his bow and arrows, having then lighted the pile, when Arjun was about to sit down upon it, Sri Morari, the destroyer of pride, came, and laid hold of his hand. And said laughing, Arjun! Do not burn thyself, I will fulfill thy compact, and will bring that Brahmin's sons from whatever place they may be in. The Lord of the three worlds having thus spoken and ascended his chariot, went to the eastward, taking Arjun with him. And, having crossed the 7 seas, arrived at the mountainous belt, bounding the world. Having on arrival there descended from the chariot, they entered a very dark cave. Then Sri Krishna Chandji gave an order to the Koit Sudarsan, who, having created a light, equal to the splendor of 100 million of suns, went in advance of Krishna and dispelled the great darkness from before him. Having left the darkness they proceeded a short distance, and then they went into water. There were great waves into which they entered, shutting their eyes, Krishna and Arjun swam to the abode of the king of the serpent race, who upholds the world. Having opened their eyes on going there, they beheld a large, long, broad, lofty, very elegant golden house, covered with jewels. And there, upon the head of the king of the serpent face was an ornamented throne, upon which, in the form of a black cloud, of an elegant shape, with a moon-like body, eyes like the lotus, wearing a diadem and earrings, dressed in yellow. With a yellow silken cloth bound on him, having on a garland of flowers reaching to his feet, and a pearl of necklace, the Lord himself of a fascinating appearance dwelt. And Brahmu, Rudru, Indru and all the gods standing up in his presence, were glorifying him. O great king! Having beheld this handsome figure, Arjun and Sri Krishna Chandji went into the presence of the Lord. And, having performed obeisance, and joined their hands, mentioned all the reasons of their journey. On hearing their speech the Lord had all the Brahmin's children brought there, and given to them. And Arjun was delighted at seeing and receiving them. Then the Lord said, You are both portions of my body, behold Huri and Arjun to whom my heart desires. You went upon the earth to remove its burthens, and have conferred great happiness on holy and virtuous men, you have destroyed all the demons and evil spirits, and adjusted the affairs of gods, men and sages, you both are parts of me. Your business has been accomplished. Having thus spoken, Bhagwan allowed Arjun and Sri Krishna Ji to take leave, who came to the city, bringing the children with them, and the Brahmin received his children. There were rejoicings and festivities in every house. Having recited thus much, Sri Shukdev Ji said to Raja Purichit, O great king! Whoever shall hear this story, and reflect upon it, his sons shall be prosperous. Chapter 90. Sri Shukdev Ji said, O great king! Sri Krishna Chand constantly dwelt in the city of Dwarka, where increase and plenty flourished in the houses of all the descendants of Judu. The men and women were decorated with jewels and ornaments, and had a lively appearance. They applied scents, sandal and perfumes to their bodies. The Mahajans had places cleanly swept and sprinkled with water in the markets, roads and crossroads, where traders of different countries brought all kinds of articles of merchandise for sale. Here and there the inhabitants of the city amused themselves. In different places Brahmins read the Vedas, and in every house persons recited the Puranas. Holy and virtuous men sung the praises of Huri during the 8 watches. Charioteers brought chariots, horses and bullocks, harnessed to the royal gate. Brave, bold, resolute, powerful descendants of Judu in chariots and carriages, and mounted on elephants and horses came to pay their respects to the Raja. Persons of skill amused him by dancing, singing and playing upon musical instruments. Bards and panegyrists received elephants, horses, dresses, arms, grain, money and golden ornaments, studded with jewels, for celebrating his renown. Having narrated thus much, Sri Shukdev Ji said to the Raja, O great king. Whilst Raja Oagerson engaged thus in various diversions in the metropolis of his empire, Sri Krishna Chand, the root of joy, constantly amused himself with his 16,108 wives. Sometimes the wives being overcome by their passion, made a figure in the likeness of Krishna, and sometimes Huri, powerless from love, dressed his wives, and the sports and diversions they carried on together cannot be described. I cannot speak of them, they required to be seen. Shukdev Ji after this said, O great king! One night Sri Krishna Chand was amusing himself with his women, when the celestial musicians and choristers, having beheld the various pastimes and diversions of Krishna, played upon lutes, timbrels, pipes and kettledrums, and sang of his excellent attributes. There was an harmonious concert, when, upon a thought occurring to Krishna, whilst engaged in diversion, he took them all with him, and went to the banks of a tank, and going into the water began to sport and carry on pastimes in it. After this, his wives, whilst thus amusing themselves in the water, were overjoyed with love for Krishna, and forgetting everything, said, on seeing a ruddy goose and its mate, calling out to each other from opposite sides of the tank, O Chukwi! Why do you call out mournfully, and not sleep during the night, whilst separated from your mate? You call upon him in a very troubled and restless manner, you discourse of your beloved to us, we have become Krishna's slave girls. Having thus spoken they went on. They then began to say to the sea, O sea! Thou who heavest deep sighs and remainest awake day and night, art thou afflicted at being separated from any one or grieved for the loss of thy 14 jewels? They then addressed the moon, O moon! Why dost thou continue emaciated and in low spirits, what? Hast thou consumption, that thy form diminishes and increases daily, and thy body and mind are fascinated, as ours are on beholding Sri Krishna Chand? Having recited thus much Sri Shukdev Ji said to the Raja, O great king! The women, in like manner, addressed all kinds of speeches to the air, clouds, cuckoos, hills, rivers and geese. Afterwards all his wives diverted themselves with Sri Krishna Chand, and constantly attended upon him and sang of his excellences, and obtained whatever they desired, and Krishna carried on his domestic affairs in the manner prescribed for all virtuous housekeeper. O great king! The 16,108 wives of Sri Krishna Chand whom I mentioned before, had each 10 sons and 1 daughter, and their progeny was numberless, I have not the power to describe it. But I know so much, that there were 3,88,100 schools for instructing the offspring of Sri Krishna Chand and the same number of schoolmasters. None of Sri Krishna Chand's sons or grandsons was deficient in beauty, strength, physical power, wealth or moral and religious merit, each one excelled and surpassed the other, how shall I attempt to describe them? The sage proceeded to say, O great king! I have sung of the games of Bruj and Dvarka, which confer pleasure upon all. Whoever shall sing of them with affection, shall undoubtedly obtain supreme and eternal happiness, and salvation. Whatever benefit is derived from religious penance, sacrifice, gifts, fasting, pilgrimage and bathing at holy places, the same benefit is derived from hearing and reciting the history of Huri.